chart there, John Thune. Way to go. Thanks for coming today. We appreciate it. I'm joined today by Senator John Thune, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Senator Richard Lugar, Senator David Vitter, Senator John Cornyn, Senator Roy Blunt, and we also have with us Representative Lee Terry from the House, who, as you know, is sponsoring Keystone legislation in the House. And we're here to talk about the Keystone XL pipeline. Today, matter of fact, he is just finishing. President Obama is in Cushing, Oklahoma, where he's taking credit for moving forward on the southern leg of the Keystone XL pipeline. So this is the southern 1/3 of the pipeline. So status is he's blocking the northern 2/3 of the pipeline, continuing to block the northern 2/3 of the pipeline, but he's going forward on the southern 1/3 and announcing, taking credit for going forward on the only portion of the pipeline that he doesn't need to approve. So the only portion that he doesn't need to approve, he's down there and taking credit for it. And frankly, it's bizarre. I mean, I just don't know how else to describe it. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Meanwhile, gas prices continue to climb. The price of a gallon of gasoline, I think, national average is about $3.86. And it's on its way to $4. Some analysts say could be $5 or more this summer. And the reason is because of exactly this type of situation. I mean, this isn't even dithering. This is firmly straddling both sides of the issue, literally and figuratively. I mean, here he is standing in Cushing, Oklahoma. He could put one foot on one side and say, okay, this part of the pipeline can go, and put one foot on the other side. That part can't. And the American consumers are paying the price at the pump. This means not one more drop of oil, not one more drop of crude from Canada. And it also means that we can't move oil from places like my home state of North Dakota, where we're dramatically increasing our domestic oil production, light sweet Bakken crude, and we can't bring that to market through a pipeline. I was just up in Williston, North Dakota on Monday of this week. And I'll tell you what, it's creating real hardship for us. We need infrastructure. We are moving oil by rail, and we're moving it by truck. And the amount of trucks on our roads up there are a real problem. They are beating up our roads. They are creating safety issues, traffic safety issues for our people. So here we are producing all this oil, trying to help with the price of gas for American consumers throughout the country, and we're held up. The facts are, I mean, you know, he's talking about expediting. The facts are that this project has been under review for 3.5 years. More than 3.5 years. So he calls studying a project for 3.5 years, going out and having a press conference and saying part of it's moving forward, the only part that doesn't need approval, I'm going to hold up the rest, and somehow he calls that expediting energy development in this country. That's the problem right there. That's why gas prices are almost $4 and going higher. And I think that what's going on today epitomizes it. Matter of fact, I mean, it's just really hard to understand, and it absolutely makes no sense. Gas prices are going higher, and this president is making it worse. He's making it worse. Look, we've got to start developing our energy resources, and we can do it. We can do it in a safe and a sound way. We have put forward legislation. The president, after 3.5 years, denies this project. So, we said, okay, fine, we'll try again. We put together a bipartisan piece of legislation. Last week in the Senate, we had strong bipartisan support. The president personally lobbies to oppose the very project he's out there trying to take credit for today. Personally lobbies against it. Again, this just doesn't make any sense. So we're here today. We're here today to say, look, for the sake of our economy, for the sake of job creation in this country, for the sake of national security, we're asking this president to work with us, to stop this kind of press conference, which makes no sense, to stop that kind of grandstanding, and get back here and let's go to work. We have put forward good legislation in the House and in the Senate. It absolutely addresses all of the environmental concerns he's raised. Let's pass that legislation. Let's actually do the job for the American people. Senator Thune.
Thanks, John, and thanks for your great leadership on this issue. And I'm glad to have Lee Terry from the House with us here. You know, for a long time, the administration was hiding behind this cover that Nebraska was somehow the reason why they couldn't approve this. And of course, we all know that Nebraska is very much for this and has come up with an alternative route. But I think the point everybody wants to make today is today the President is having his 17th news conference on energy in the last 3 months. 17th news conference on energy. And it's ironic, I think, in a lot of respects that he's actually talking about the Keystone Pipeline. His approval ratings keep going down because I think people recognize that his blocking of the Keystone Pipeline is hurting our gas prices in this country. It is making us more dependent upon foreign sources of energy. It is a national security issue. And so his approval rating has gone down. He's decided now to approve 29% of this. We're hoping that if his approval ratings continue to go down even further, that maybe he'll approve the part that actually connects to the oil. To have a pipeline, you've got to connect to something, as Senator Hoeven pointed out. And in this case, what he's given us is a 29% solution. The President always gets up and talks about how he's for all the above. Actually, he's only for 29% of the above. Ironically, the 29% that doesn't actually connect to the energy source. So, you know, it's a very straightforward issue. I think that the American people understand it, which is why the President's approval ratings reflect the fact that they're very frustrated with the policies that this administration has chosen when it comes to energy and the things it has chosen not to do. And when you have the President of the United States calling Democrat senators to try and encourage them to vote against the legislation that was on the floor a couple of weeks ago, you have somebody who is very much engaged in blocking what are serious energy solutions for America's future. And it's just absolutely amazing that 2 weeks later he would go to Cushing, Oklahoma, and talk about approving 29% of the route, the very 29% that doesn't need his approval. The part that needs his approval, he still continues to block. And what he's doing is he's blocking access to American energy, he's blocking American jobs, he's blocking American economic growth for this country and for our economy. And so we hope that he will decide to not just use the 29% solution, but really support an all of the above solution that includes building out the rest of the Keystone Pipeline that actually will access the energy that will make us less dependent upon foreign sources of oil.
Thanks, John. Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, and thanks, Senator Hoeven and Congressman Terry, for really playing the lead on this issue and being dedicated to continuing this discussion. I guess, ironically, I'd also want to thank President Obama for calling attention to this yet one more week. And I guess it's possible to report this story and act like that President Obama is really an important part of playing an important part here in getting this done, but I don't quite know how you write it that way. It's already been well discussed that this is the one thing that the government doesn't have anything to do with, and so he's down there saying we're moving forward with this while the government's holding back the part that the government does control. It's sort of like talking about, as they are constantly doing now, that we're producing more oil and gas than we have in a long time, but we're not producing more oil and gas than we have than we were producing in the areas the government has anything to do with. We're actually producing less oil and less gas in those areas where Americans are able to make the decisions largely on their own, invest the money on their own, not apply for drilling in the Gulf or looking for gas and oil on public lands that were previously available. There's less being produced there. This is a policy that makes no sense, and it makes no sense to the American people. Secretary Chu last week said he'd give himself an A-. I think he actually gave himself more than an A- for the policies that impacted gas pump prices. Now, maybe that's because Secretary Chu said that he thought, that our gas should be as high as gas in Europe, that was our problem, that our gas prices just weren't high enough, and it didn't force us to use more expensive sources that he would prefer to see us use. When you're standing at the gas pump, these policies don't make sense. And people know it. when we're in Missouri or North Dakota or South Dakota or Nebraska or anywhere else represented in Indiana, Texas, Louisiana, and you mentioned the Keystone Pipeline, people understand that we should be getting resources from our nearest neighbor that has abundant resources, that wants to sell them to us and is going to sell them to somebody else if we don't buy them. You know, every other country in the world looks at its natural resources, and the first two words they think of are economic opportunity. And that should be the first two words you think of. What can we do with this in the safest possible way that enhance our economy, create jobs, and help families? And so if we won't buy the tar sands oil from Canada, they're going to turn that pipeline another way, and they'll sell it to Asians, primarily to China. And that's exactly what they should do for the best interest of their own economy and families in their own country. And for the best interest of our economy, we should be buying it. We should say, sure, we're glad to have that from you. You're a great trading partner. When we send you $1, you send almost that entire dollar back to us. We don't have to worry about energy security for the energy we'd be getting from Canada. Well, why aren't we doing this? And then why would the president be in such a desperate position on this that he has to go to call attention to this one more week and try to take credit for the one thing that he has no involvement in? I'm glad to talk about it, and thanks to President Obama for bringing it up again today.
Thanks, Roy. Senator Mikowski.
Thank you, Senator Hoeven, again for your leadership and that of our colleagues from Indiana and Nebraska, making sure that people understand what is going on. It's pretty apparent. The President just finished his comments there in Cushing, Oklahoma, and I think what you heard was kind of that one-handed clapping, wondering why is he standing up and taking credit for this. And as those who preceded me in comments here have mentioned, this is the one thing that he doesn't have the authority over in terms of signing off on. The one thing that we need him to do is figure out how we go across that border, how we connect what they're going to do in the southern end of the country with where the oil is. Because as good as it looked for him to be standing in front of all that rolled pipe, that pipe doesn't do anything if we're not moving a product. And what we want to be doing is moving that product from Canada into this country, into our refineries, to not only allow us to have a resource that we need from a neighbor that we trust and have an established and our most important trading partner, but to provide those jobs that we're all waiting for. So pretty astounding, to use Senator Hoeven's word, pretty bizarre that we are here watching the president take credit for this. I think what he's doing is he's managing a public relations issue right now. He knows that he's on the wrong side of this, that the American people do understand, they do get what's going on with the opportunities that present themselves with a full Keystone Pipeline, not just a 29% Keystone Pipeline, as Senator Thune has mentioned. You know, the president has started to use the phrase that that I've been using for years, that many of my colleagues have been using for years, and that's an all-of-the-above energy policy. Well, if he's going to use the phrase, if he's going to embrace it as he has, then he needs to own it. He needs to own it fully instead of just kind of cherry-picking those bits and pieces that work well for him. We can talk about true energy security, and certainly North American energy security, if we have the Keystone Pipeline moving into this country, providing those oil resources for Americans. We can truly have a policy that gains us North American energy independence if we're able to access our resources up in the north, in Alaska, in the Rockies. It is within range, but it's not going to be within range if you pick and choose. So when the president says it's all of the above, good, join us. But don't just say it's the all of the above that I choose to promote, and I'm going to put hurdles and objections in the way of everything else. So interesting day in Cushing, Oklahoma, but again, it's that thunderous sound of the one-handed clapping that I'm hearing.
Thank you, Lisa. Senator Lugar?
Thank you, Senator Hoeven. I just want to indicate that I have seen public opinion polls that clearly indicate the American people are in favor of the XL pipeline. This has been reflected in several ways in action in the Congress. As representatives of the people, we passed a resolution last year that the President signed because it was an amendment to continuation of the Social Security cut that said, Mr. President, you must make up your mind in 60 days. So the President had another chance, and the President said no, he really didn't want to make a decision. But we came back again, indefatigable. In the Senate last week, we had an excellent amendment on the highway bill that got 56 votes, a majority of the Senate, 11 Democrats, joining all the Republicans who were there that day. And because we had a 60-vote requirement for amendments on the highway bill, the amendment did not pass on that occasion. We have noted activity by our House colleagues as they have discussed the highway bill, and we'll both be discussing other bills. The battle is not over. Now, I make that point because as the debate began, very clearly we have energy objectives which are tremendously important. And right now this is reflected in the gas prices, but people, I think more soberly, are also talking about the fact that Saudi Arabia appears to be the only reserve left in the world. If we do not take this strategic activity now, we are going to be in trouble not only this year, but for many years to come. We have to get that through our heads. And I would say, secondly, after the strategic aspect, right now, the issue is jobs in America, jobs. That's what I hear from all of my constituents, and I have visited 3 plants in Indiana that are producing now, prospectively, orders for the pipeline. They have been in touch with Keystone. They are producing now, and they're hiring more people at the Fairfield plant and at the Caterpillar plant in Lafayette, as a matter of fact. So that's not the hereafter, that's now. And that's why I suspect the President, despite the extraordinary pressures of extreme environmental interests who paraded around the White House and who demanded literally that we not import oil at all, and that is the big argument. People suggesting that not only oil sands, but actually fossil fuels are injurious for our future, and we ought to cut out the oil business. The President finally has decided that is too extreme, even though he will face pressure and already criticism for being in Cushing today. Now, having faced that criticism, hopefully he will get it. But if not, we will. And at some point, we're going to pass legislation which says the pipeline will be built, President or not, State Department or not, simply because the American people want it and our security demands it.
Right. Very good, Dick. Thank you. Senator Vitter.
Thanks, John. It's good to join you and all of our colleagues. I certainly agree with everyone here that the President's appearance this morning is useful, at least in one sense. It's really the perfect metaphor for, the perfect example of his broader policy on domestic energy. Here he does, as has been mentioned, goes to Cushing to embrace, to take credit for the only part of the pipeline he doesn't have a major role in. And meanwhile, he's vetoing the rest of it, the 71% that he does control. And that's the perfect metaphor for his broader policy. You look at the Gulf. I live on the Gulf Coast. Permitting since the BP disaster is still way down. It hasn't reached pre-disaster levels. It needs to. People are hurting and out of work as a result. In terms of the Outer Continental Shelf, President Obama's 5-year OCS lease plan is half of the previous lease plan. So while we should be doing more, he's backing up. He's turned us in the wrong direction. You look at production on federal land and water, it's down 11 to 14% in the last few years. So what he controls is down, 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 no, no, no. And that's a fundamental problem that's ending up at higher prices at the pump.
Thanks, David. Senator Cornyn.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, if I could summarize, I would say to the President, lead, follow, or just get out of the way. That will help bring down the price of gasoline at the pump. You know, it's ironic that the President's in Cushing saying you can't drill yourself to lower gasoline prices Well, we're not even talking about drilling on the Keystone Pipeline, not in the United States. We're saying just allow us to turn on the spigot and to build the pipeline that will carry the oil all the way down to refineries in Port Arthur, Texas. 700,000 barrels of oil that can be then refined into gasoline and other petroleum products. And you know the president and his allies believe that the laws of supply and demand still apply here when the senior senator from New York suggests that one of the solutions is to go to Saudi Arabia and ask them to produce more oil there. I'm wearing a pin that was given to me by some of my friends at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that has been one of the leaders in advocating for the completion of the Keystone XL pipeline, because they understand as well as anybody that what we're talking about is jobs. We're talking about a lot of things, but basically what it boils down to is jobs. In my state alone, we see $41 million in construction tax revenue for Texas, a direct total investment of $1.6 billion in our state, and nationwide it would mean between 250,000 and 500,000 new jobs. You don't have to take my word for it. All you have to do is look at the major oil producing states in the country. States like Alaska, Texas, North Dakota. Our unemployment rates are lower than the national average, in part because we're taking advantage of our natural resources and the opportunities we have not only to gain greater energy security, but to create jobs and help relieve some of the pain that consumers are feeling at the gas pump because of growing demand worldwide on this limited resource called oil and gas. So I hope the president will lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Thanks, John. We're very pleased to have joining us today Representative Lee Terry. Representative Terry's passed Keystone legislation in the House, and we are very much looking forward to continuing to work with him. Thanks,
Thank
Lee.
you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been pushing Keystone Pipeline now for, about a year and a couple of months now, noting how important it is to our security, energy security for the United States, as well as, creating jobs. And it's appropriate, Senator, that we have this press conference at this time as the president on his Magical Mystery Tour stops in Cushing, Oklahoma. And I ask the people here today, people that may be hearing us, to not fall for the verbal magic that's occurring here, because you need to not watch what he says, not watch the lips, but watch what he's doing with his hands, which is denying the Keystone Pipeline. It's been said many times, but the reality is TransCanada was going to build the Cushing to Port Arthur from the very beginning, regardless of what the president did on allowing it to cross the border. So him standing up in Cushing, taking credit as if he had done something positive to allow that to happen, which was completely false, is like the rooster taking credit for the dawn. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If the president is truly serious about putting this country in a position of energy independence and security, it can be done. And we can diversify our portfolio of fuels. The president stands up and tells people that he's in favor of that. But I want to see the lips stop and the action start. So I'm open, Mr. President, to sitting down with you and talking about it. We've heard it up here on this stage today. Let's do something positive so that the American people know that we actually have an energy policy that's going to help their family budgets when they pull up at the gas pumps.
Thanks, Lee. Great. And that is the bottom line. Hey, come work with us. We have addressed the concerns. Let's get going on this pipeline. Let's get going on all the other things that can produce more energy for this country safely, dependably, with good environmental stewardship.